Good evening, everyone. I have 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order and ask the city clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Jeff Elshoff. Appears he's absent. And Dr. Joel Schroeder.
Here.
Mr. Justin Smith.
Here.
Mr. John Welch.
Present.
And Miss Diane Nguyen. Okay. And you have a quorum, Mayor.
Thank you. For our opening prayer this evening, we have Dr. Rob Lindstadt, principal of the Sunrise Christian Academy, to lead us in prayer. Don't think so. This is not Camelot.
Next week.
To live in a country with such enormous freedoms, the freedom to choose so many aspects of our life, our place to live, our vocation, our friends. We thank you for the freedom to worship and to pray to you. And Father, we pray for our civil workers in our community, such as our firemen, our policemen, our public works officials. Father, we pray that you'll bless them, and for their service, we pray that you'll protect them. Pray that you'll bless not only them, but also their families. Father, we think of the tragedies of the flooding in Germany and how you spared us, and the fires on the West Coast and the tornadoes in Iowa. Father, all these things, we thank you for the peaceful community that you've given us. We pray for our country tonight. Pray for our health, our safety of our citizens. And Father, we pray that we will honor and love and obey you, and that our families, our community will all experience your rich and full blessing. Father, we want to thank you most of all for our Savior, Jesus Christ, who died on the cross, shed his blood, and rose again, that we could have eternal life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, do we have any additions for the agenda? Here none, I'll move on to the consent agenda. This only contains the minutes of the July 6th City Council meeting. Our last meeting was a marathon lasting until 11 p.m. So in an effort to streamline our regular city council meetings, I've asked our city manager to add items to future consent agendas that do not need discussion or our typical action items. So Mr. Lasher is working on a set of guidelines he will be sharing with council soon. Any item on the consent agenda that can easily be removed to allow for individual discussion. So with our next city council meeting, August 3, we will start utilizing this consent agenda for those items not likely to require discussion or likely passed unanimously. If any member of the governing body sees one or more items on the consent agenda that they want discussion, we can get the consent agenda. When we get to this consent agenda, on that meeting's agenda, the person wishing to discuss an item will say, Mr. Mayor, I request item number such and such to be removed from the consent agenda. I will then acknowledge the request and advise where on the agenda we will address the moved items. So I'm hopeful this change will help improve efficiency of our meetings without stifling any desire for needed discussion. So with that, we'll move on to consent agenda. Item A.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and second by Mr. Welch. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Move on to discussion and approval of appropriations and ordinances. So item A under 7A is consideration of appropriation ordinance 2113. This report period includes expenditures to close out GO bonds 2012A and 2013D, plus cost of issuance of 2021A and 2021B. In addition, South Central Ceiling was paid $154,764 for a portion of the slurry seal project. Any discussion on 7A?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
I'll make a motion to approve appropriations ordinance 21-13.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Move on to item 8. So Mr. Gary O'Neill, Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce President, is here to address the City Council. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Gary O'Neill. I live at 4967 North Hillcrest here in Bel Aire. I am the current president of the Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce. I originally wanted to speak to the governing body at a budget workshop, but I was unable to do that, unfortunately. So I asked if I could just address for a few minutes this evening, but I wasn't sure under citizens' concerns that 3 minutes would be long enough, but I promise I won't go over 5. I wanted to update you a little bit on the current status of the Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce. Originally, the Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce was founded in 2008 by some local people here, formed the chamber. I was not a member at that time. I was busy in 2008 trying to have our business survive here in Wichita during that economic conditions of 2007, 8, 9, and you know what those were like. Upon retiring in 2011, I found some time on my hands, so I decided I would join the Bel Aire Chamber of Commerce and have attended off and on most of the time since then. At one point, we had 93 people who had belonged to the Chamber of Commerce at one time or another. Currently, we have paid membership of about 25. We have attendance at our membership meetings, and it may be because of COVID last year and maybe some fall over from this year. 6 to 8 people are showing up at our chamber meetings, and that's including when we have a speaker. And it's usually the same 6 or 8 faces. Last year, or year before last, we'd received some funding from the city, which we're very appreciative of, to try to hire a part-time executive director for the chamber that we could work 15 hours a week for us and help try to grow our chamber. I've been through 2 executive directors. I'm on my 3rd. And this person we currently have, I think, will do an excellent job. My concern is she's very qualified, and my concern is how long I'll be able to hang on to this person. We sent out, to try to grow the chamber, emails to all 93 people we had addresses for. We sent out a request, a questionnaire, very simple. We only had 5 questions on there. Basically, had they belonged to the chamber? Do you currently belong to the chamber? If you don't belong to the chamber, why do you not belong to the chamber? What do you expect from the chamber? What would you like for us to provide for you? What kind of value? What would make you attend? Out of those 93 emails we sent out, we got 6 responses. We sent out 3 months in a row, got 1 more response. It's very frustrating when you're trying to grow a chamber of commerce in a bedroom community which has almost no businesses locally. Most of the businesses that do business in Bel Aire do business with the city of Bel Aire. And we have contacted and are contacting all the people that do business with the city of Bel Aire to try to encourage them to not only join the chamber, but to attend our functions when we have speakers and come out and let us participate. In January of this year, Tristan, bless her heart, had been helping the chamber for many years through the grace of the city. And we lost her in January. That's the reason for coming up with these part-time people that we've been working on for the last 18 months. It is my opinion, I expressed a little bit this to the mayor. Currently, the chamber has enough funding to run through the first quarter of 2022. And that would pay the salary and expenses of the part-time executive director that we now have. And her goal is to do nothing, and our goal and our board members is to grow the membership for the Bel Aire Chamber. And I was very honest with this person when we hired her. I said, if we are unable to grow this chamber by the end of the first quarter, unless we can grow and get some income in, or get some activities going to raise some funds for the chamber, there is a good possibility Bel Aire may not have a Chamber of Commerce. It is like any business or any organization, it takes money to run it and fund it. So my reason that I was going to speak with you at the workshop was, as a governing body, I think you, as the governing body members of basically a bedroom community, do you desire to have a Chamber of Commerce in Bel Aire? And if you do, what commitment do you want to make to it financially? We want to grow it, but it's going to take time. We've been through COVID. It's going to take some funding. We're going to work hard to grow it. I had mentioned this to the mayor in a meeting we were in recently, and shortly thereafter, I received a funding proposal from the city of Bel Aire for the year 2022 that I will take to the board, and I'll visit with them. I would hope to have had some kind of answer for you this evening, but 2 of our board members are on vacation, and that you run into that this time of year, as we all know. But shortly, I think by next week, the end of next week, we'll be able to sit down in person with them and go over this proposal. And after I visit with them, I would like an opportunity to visit maybe with City Manager Ty Lasher about their response, and see if we can work together to grow the chamber in Bel Aire, if that's the desire of the governing body. And I know it's the desire of our board to want to continue to grow it. But it's tough in these business climates that we're in to grow some things right now. So I hope I didn't speak too long. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Anyone have questions for Mr. O'Neill?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
I don't know that I have a question, but I do think that the chamber is a great thing for the city of Bel Aire, and that it's worth working to see if we can grow it. So I fully support that and appreciate your efforts to do so.
And I echo those comments as well.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Nguyen.
I'm a former member because I'm not currently a member. But I know that it's been a struggle since the very beginning of trying to get it together, because a lot of the businesses are not really located here. And my feeling was that anyone who owns a business or that type of thing should be a member. And I was one of those because my business wasn't really located here. But then things have changed in my life a little bit, so I'm not up on what's going on now. I think it's an important something. I don't care whether it's called a Chamber of Commerce or some other name. We need something that draws the businesses here, and the business owners who live here may not have a business here, that draws them together, because it's important monetarily, for one thing, to have something of that type as an input as well. So not just for what they're doing, but for all of the things that, that Bel Aire is doing. New businesses coming in and or wanting to come in. Where do they come? Where do they find out who is Bel Aire? I mean, you guys are great, but you're only one person, and if they're only talking to you, that doesn't give them much of a feeling. So I think it's a very important thing, and it's been struggling. So anything that we can do to help them needs to happen.
In answer to your question about where we'll be marketing, you're talking about your business was not in Bel Aire. We are marketing outside of Bel Aire. Talking with our executive director, we've told them to contact any of the city, any of the people that do business with the city, regardless of where they are. And then the local businesses that abut Bel Aire, we're also contacting all of those, down Rock Road, down Oliver, Webb, Greenwich, Keachai, all around. We're trying to get people to come to our chamber meetings and keep up with what's going on in Bel Aire. Anything else? If not, I don't want you to be here till 11 o'clock again tonight. But,
Neither do we. Thank
I
you.
will say, I think we set the record once. I think we were here to 2 a.m. many, many years ago.
Of course, I've seen it's midnight, but I don't want to go back there.
But nor do I. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I do think we support I know we support the Chamber of Commerce, so I appreciate everybody's comments and hopefully we can work something out. We can help this. So, thank you. Moving on to citizens' concerns. Are there any citizens that would like to speak to the council tonight? Seeing none, I'll move on to council member reports. Dr. Schroeder, would you like to begin, please?
I have no report.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I did attend the Sedgwick County Association of Cities meeting on Saturday. We received an update from County Commissioner Howell, as well as the county manager, on some of the things going on with Sedgwick County right now. Much like we are, they're actively in the middle of their budget cycle, and they did make us aware that there is some upcoming periods for public comment on the Sedgwick County budget. So they made us aware that that information is on their website, and I wanted to pass that along. They also spent quite a bit of time talking about some of the opportunities that they're exploring and really piloting to capture some of the synergies between the Sedgwick County Parks and Recreation departments with the City of Wichita Parks and Recreation departments. And there's quite a bit of discussion on that for the broader area and some potential opportunities that may exist there. So those were the primary topics, and it was overall a fantastic discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Welch.
No report.
Ms. Nguyen.
No report.
Very good. Thank you. Move on to mayor's report. So I understand Councilwoman Diane Nguyen celebrated her birthday this last week. So let me please join me in wishing her a belated happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
So some many citizens have read articles in the Wichita Eagle concerning the slow EMS response times. And a couple months ago, a citizen came to this council raising a similar concern about staffing at the EMS facility on Hillside. Our city manager investigated that issue and found that it has a full-time ambulance with crew and sometimes a second ambulance. However, that does not address the broader issue of overall response times. The ambulance assigned at the Hillside station can be called to areas outside of its normal response area due to need. So the county commission is very concerned about this issue. Commissioner Jim Howell has been doing some of his own investigations. And from what I've been able to glean from the information I've seen, there are two glaring issues to be addressed: poor morale among the EMS staff and lack of transparency of response times. In May, the county hired a law firm, Height, Fanning, and Honeyman, to investigate the morale issues for the county. In the news yesterday, we learned that the county manager suspended the director of EMS. So the county is clearly taking action. So I had the opportunity to talk with County Manager Tom Stoltz at the SCAC, the SCAC meeting on Saturday. Mr. Stoltz said that if anyone has a specific complaint about EMS service, like response times, rough rides, or any of those kind of things, please let him know. As personnel matters, he can only work actual situations, not general concerns. The general concern of overall response time metric is something that needs to be addressed. So our city manager and I will have a meeting that was scheduled a few weeks ago with the county manager, Tom Stoltz, and Commissioner Metzner. That meeting was originally planned for July 13th and is now scheduled for July 23rd. This issue is one we will discuss with the county. I will impress upon them the consistent reporting of response times is a critical data point that the public needs to have the assurance of quality, timeliness of EMS when they have an emergency. Not routinely publishing these reports is a lack of transparency. On July 13th, I attended the Regional Economic Area Partnership meeting to discuss solar farm concept in Sedgwick County. The company working on this is Crrsaa Energy. They are looking for 1,600 to 3,200 acres near an Evergy web substation. So they have targeted Western Sedgwick County for this project. It was interesting to gain a better understanding of the solar technology today. On July 13th, I also attended the Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, WAMPO, meeting, and we heard presentations from Rose Hill and Valley Center on their respective land use and transportation growth plans. These are similar to what Mr. Lasher presented in May for Bel Aire. We also have the 2018 traffic flows data for each member city. So the interesting thing, as Mr. O'Neill was saying, we were a bedroom community, and I'm not disputing that, but these numbers are interesting in that they're showing for 2018 that 3,238 people commuting out of the city for work and 1,731 commuting into the city for work. So that's 35% of the commuters with Bel Aire coming into our city every day. So that's much higher than I thought it would be. And we often consider Bel Aire a bedroom community. Looks like we are growing out of that from this 3-year-old data, but it is 3-year-old. So I don't imagine we'll get any more recent data like that. It takes time to develop those things. So lastly, we heard about the Crrsaa federal funds. So this is another section of the ARPA bill that was passed in March of this year. So WAMPO received almost $3.8 million for this program. The WAMPO Executive Committee determined that all TIP approved projects and some MTP projects are eligible for this program as long as they are not being funded by some other federal program. So our Woodlawn project is not eligible for this money because it's already funded by other programs. But Bel Aire does have 2 other projects in the MTP that are eligible. The applications are due July 30th of this month or this year. And Mr. Lasher and Ann Stevens are working on an application. I believe they're applying for funding to rebuild the intersection at Oliver and 45th. However, keep in mind, there is no guarantee we will get any of this funding. WAMPO will review all applications and make a determination of what they will do in September-October timeframe. So Council President Smith talked about the Sedgwick County Association of Cities, and I think I won't repeat what his comments were because I agree with them and they were there. So, excuse me. But Mr. Stoltz did talk about the ARPA funds. Also, excuse me, the county's received about $100 billion. And this is separate from WAMPO. This is the county directly from the federals. Yes. $100 million. Yes. Did I say it wrong? Oh, sorry. They are considering sharing that with communities within the county. So we may have some ideas to forward to them. Lastly, Mr. Stoltz talked about concerns with the EMS, and we've already talked about those. The last item I have is on COVID. KDHE is now reporting 45% of Kansas vaccinated with at least 1 dose. That's up less than 1% from July 6th. So slow progress continues. Sedgwick County now reports a run of 4.5 months, basically flatline, but that's really kind of changed in the last few weeks because as of yesterday, we were at 6.3%. That flatline metric looked like it was between 2.3 and 5.2%. So that uptick trend started on June 15th, and it's still climbing. This is now over what we appear to be normal noise in the data, and so new cases are growing. However, almost all these new cases are people who have not been vaccinated. We still need to be vigilant with frequent hand washing, covering sneezes, and other practices to reduce the spread of germs. So I will now ask our city attorney for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to update council on the fact that we have a code enforcement officer, and the code enforcement officer is starting to send courtesy letters to residents on common violations. Those violations are easily accessible on our website under code enforcement. There are some simple, basic explanations of the common violations that we're approaching, addressing through courtesy letters. And one would be street trees, grass, property maintenance, inoperable vehicles, improperly parked RVs, boats, and trailers. And we're not doing backflow devices this year because it's an odd year. But the enforcement approach has been education for a while and continues to be. The courtesy letters are a form of that education, just letting people know, hey, this is what's going on, please take care of it. And our code enforcement officers reported 90% compliance. One that he asked me to take some time to explain to the public is that RVs, boats, trailers, and other recreational vehicles are limited to being allowed to park on a person's driveway for 72 hours. If the vehicle is parked in the street, that time frame is reduced to 24 hours. Those vehicles have to be removed and stored or screened behind a proper fence that a person couldn't see it from the street. And the reason for that is safety. When a neighboring vehicle can't see, a neighboring vehicle is pulling out of their driveway and can't see past a vehicle in the neighboring driveway, that could be an issue. Sight lines are always disrupted when larger vehicles are parked in the streets, and it can often be a clutter issue. So we're working on educating people about that. And like I said, we've received 90% compliance thus far with that education. And I would just encourage people to go to the website because it's pretty well stated on the website what the expectation is. So that's all I have.
Very good. Thank you. And move on to city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to congratulate our Director of Finance, Ted Henry, and his staff. The City of Bel Aire received the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for 2021. So cities put together budgets, and it can be very simple as a state form, which if you look in our budgets, it's at the back, and there's 10 pages roughly that the state says we have to fill out. Or which is really all that's required, or you can do a budget like we do that tries to educate our citizens, explain where the money goes, make it more transparent and understandable for our citizens. And that's what his goal is with the budget that he produces at the end of the year after you've adopted the numbers and those types of things. And what they look at is they want to make sure it's a policy document, which again, that's what you create through the budget. It's a financial plan, which we talk about the future CIP and estimates for over the next 5 years and such, and operations guidelines. So that's for our internal staff so that they can look at it and see what the priorities are of the council, where the money is going. And then a communication device, again, for the citizens to be able to look at and understand how we spend money and how each department spends money. So the Government Finance Association is basically made up of North American cities, and there's only 1,700 that receive this award. So that seems like a lot, but when you're thinking of North America, 1,700 cities are the only ones that get that. So I think in Kansas, there's only about 12 of us that get it out of the 500 cities. So it's a very important award for them, and we appreciate Ted putting a budget of that caliber together for our city. So, and then I wanted to mention that the villas at Prestwick is having a grand opening on July 31st from 10 to 2 for their new clubhouse that they've built, and it's right across from City Hall over here. Council has been accepting petitions and stuff for phase 2, and so they're going to be adding more triplexes there, but they're building a new clubhouse for, and again, that's senior living, so for their seniors to enjoy. So I'm sure they'd like anybody to join them. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, and do want to congratulate Ted and Finance Department on the award. I believe they've received this several times in the past. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think this is probably the 8th or 10th year we've received it. So it's a goal that he has every year and has met that.
We do appreciate his consistency and excellent reporting. So thank you. Move on to ordinance resolutions and final actions. So item 9 or 11A, the city recently issued GO bond debt for 20 years with interest rate around 1.5%. So at the July 10th workshop, staff presented council with several high priority street needs and estimates for debt service over a period of years. Council liked the top 3 priorities of 53rd Street reconstruction from Oliver to Woodlawn, about $2 million, additional overlay on 53rd from Woodlawn to Rock at $250,000, and engineering design of 45th and Oliver to Woodlawn for about $500,000. Our financial advisor is estimating a bond payment of about $210,000 annually for 15 years. Due to land sales, growth, and refinancing of debt, staff feels that such a debt service payment can be paid through cost savings. Are there questions of staff or discussion of this project?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
one question that I had, as we contemplate this, what is our confidence level that these estimates are accurate enough to go ahead and make a bond decision on? One of the concerns that I have is that we will issue a bond for a certain amount of dollars, and then we'll go do actual engineering and design on the projects and get real estimates from construction companies, and it isn't enough to pay for the projects.
So, yeah, that's a good question. And so there are several answers. The first answer is, how do we feel confident in these numbers? And when we were sizing this amount, I spoke with Ann, and she actually visited with some engineers to have them give us a good estimate on what that engineering would cost. We know that the engineering reconstruction for Woodlawn that's currently taking place, that was around $500,000 is what that cost was. So we feel comfortable with that number. She contacted a paving company to explain that, okay, if we want to do a 3-inch overlay, what would they estimate that price to be? And then the reconstruction is visiting with some engineers and the pavement company. So we're pretty comfortable in those. The question is, could it go more? And certainly it could, because we don't know what the price of oil, and because, if we're using asphalt, we don't know what the price of that could rise. So our thought process was that, again, if for some reason there was a cost overrun, so let's say we got this money and we did the bids this fall, and it was $100,000 more. Well, then we could take some money out of our reserves, or the money that we're setting aside. I think we've got about, again, $800,000 next year for streets. We could pull $100 out of that. The only other way that we could get more tighter numbers would be if we actually bid the projects. But they're going to want to start, if they bid it, they're going to want to start because they're putting together numbers based on asphalt prices today, and they're not going to want to wait, 3 months or 6 months to do it. We could get a very solid engineering estimate, but then that slows up our issuing of the debt, because it would take us a month or 2 months to get the quotes in, and then we start the process then. Now, I will tell you, because I talked with Kevin Cowan, is even tonight thinking through this, what if we would decide, because at your workshop, Councilmember Schroeder is going to bring up an idea that we might want to tie into this in relation to solar panels for City Hall. And there's a cost to that, and that might be something that we would want to tie into this. So could the council come back in 2 weeks or a month and say, hey, we need to up that to $3 million? Certainly it's very easy to go down, but you can go up. It would and you've done those resolutions where you restate and reaffirm the previous, and so you could change the number. Now, there's going to get a cutoff time when we can't change it. And Kevin is here, that he could probably tell us how much time we would have before we would have to set that specific number.
Attempt to, anyway.
Yeah.
Good evening. What the city manager is describing is all accurate. That's what we discussed. In terms of timing, the real cutoff is going to be the pricing or the sale of the bonds. So if you set a sale date for the bond, say it's your second August meeting, and a few days before that, I mean, you're going to have to give notice to the market that this is the amount we want to sell. And so probably a few days to a week before you would accept bids for the bonds, you need to tell the market, this is exactly the amount we're going to issue. Now, as you've seen in the past several months and really the last couple of years, even if you bumped up the principal amount, let's say it's to $3 million, you could have a sale or a winning bid that bids a premium. And I think we talked about this last time, that interest rates are so low, bidders aren't crazy about having a coupon printed on the bond that is that low. So they'll bid a higher interest rate, but pay you a premium, more cash up front. And mathematically, it's all the same cost to the city. You pay a little more interest, but you get more cash up front. So in the example I'm thinking of, if we said, well, it's $3 million, you may get a bid for more than $3 million on the date of the sale. And then you could work backwards until, and it's what Ty referenced earlier. If you're going to move backwards, you can tell the market, hey, we need to resize your bid because you bid all this premium and we don't need that much for the project. We needed $3 million. You bid $3,250,000. So maybe we back the principal amount off to $2,750,000 again, and we'll keep that premium. So there would still be some moving parts, but what I would not want to have happen is to not have the additional principal amount authorized before the date of the sale. You wouldn't want to assume you're going to get some premium and just rely on the premium and say, well, that's what we'll use to pay that. We would want to authorize that amount. And then if it turns out we could back off of it a little bit because of premium, that would be the way to go. So the days or the week that I mentioned, that's probably kind of a worst case scenario. If you knew in advance of that, maybe a couple of weeks, it would be better. And you'll see documents or see them reference the preliminary official statement, notice of sale, all those things get sent to potential bidders, and usually about a week before the sale. And that's what I'm thinking of. If before that goes out, you add maybe a component to the project, maybe bump up the principal amount a little bit, maybe back off of the principal amount, whatever that change would be. It would be great if we could include it in the notice of sale and the preliminary official statement. And again, that's about a week in advance. Given your meeting schedule, it probably would be 2 weeks before the date of the sale, because that's when you'd be meeting last before you have the sale.
So it's really more about, what amount you feel comfortable with borrowing. Because the other side of it, let's say we would bump it to 3 million and all the bids come in at 2,900 or 2.9 million. Well, then at that point you could just determine, well, we've got an extra 100,000. What other project do we want to do?
Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
the only other question that I had was around kind of the number of concurrent projects that we're able to work as a city. One of the other things that I was wondering about is, we're working the reconstruction of Woodlawn. We have a lot of new development here in the city. There's a lot of active construction projects here in the city. And, if we go and we issue some bonds to go do some street projects, I think we're all going to want them to happen right away. And I want to understand if we really have the capacity to undertake that from a city perspective or not. Do we think that it's feasible and will go really well to have these additional projects going in addition to what we're already doing?
Anne would probably have a better idea, but just in our conversation, if you look at the projects we're doing now and the number of bids we're getting, I wouldn't foresee how we would have a problem with that. Now, if we were of all the current projects we've got, and a lot of them are water, sewer and stuff, if we had one or two bidders and they were pretty high, I would get a little nervous. But when we're looking at all the subdivision projects we're doing, of course, those are being paid by special assessments. We're getting 4 and 5 bidders.
Well, just so that I'm clear, my concern is not about the number of bidders that we would have, or that we would have construction companies to do the work. It's more about the oversight of the project, the administrative side from a City of Bel Aire staff perspective that I'm concerned about.
Right.
Do we have the project management time, the oversight time to make sure that everything's moving and happening and that these projects go well?
So from that standpoint, we would, for the big project, which would be the overlay, is pretty simple. And I think Ann's staff could handle that. The engineering, of course, we just hire an engineering firm to do that. So, and they would create the plans for 45th Street. Then we'd probably look at an engineering company to do, like we do on all our other projects, to do the project management / inspection piece of it. And so that's going to be a portion of it, the cost of the inspection. But I think, Dan, did you figure those in? And primarily I'm talking the 53rd Street.
The 53rd Street project from Oliver to Woodlawn, that cost estimate was based on the application that we had submitted to WAMPO for their TIP project. So it did include funds for engineering. I am currently working with an engineer to try and get those kind of that nailed down a little bit tighter, but putting some simple plans together, and then as well doing the construction engineering, because I don't have the time to be out there on a day-to-day basis. As Ty had mentioned, the overlay on Woodlawn from Rock to Woodlawn, that's fairly simple. I can either myself or one of my staff members can be out there spot checking that to make sure we're getting the asphalt depth that we asked for and that the rolling is going correctly. But that's fairly simple. And then, as Mr. Lasher had mentioned, 45th Street is simply the engineering design. So there's not a whole lot of oversight except for plan review on that.
Can you help us understand, there's 500,000 planned for the 45th Street project, and we're looking at, and that's not construction. And I understand that's because it's in the WAMPO TPM. But the 53rd Street project is $2 million with construction. Can you help us understand why what appears to be a significant difference between those two?
Sure.
So we are better informed about that?
No, definitely. The easiest one is the 53rd Street project is a rural section with ditches. So there's less involved with that project than there is with 45th. 45th is going to be very similar to Woodlawn, a 3-lane section with curb and gutter, and it will have storm sewer associated with it. The storm sewer is a large chunk of the engineering design because we have to accommodate from all the area north of 45th Street coming on to 45th and then piping that out. So as with Woodlawn, that was a significant area of design going from the open ditches to the storm sewer. So that's a big chunk of the cost and the difference. And I don't have the estimate for that off my top of my head, but it's probably going to be very similar to Woodlawn, maybe minus $500 to $1 million for the railroad crossing.
Is there significant other utilities in 45th that are not present in 53rd, other than the storm sewer? I understand.
There is a pipeline crossing over in the 45th Street area that I do not believe is present on 53rd. And we're just going to be going with pretty much like sizes of storm sewer pipe. So there won't be changes there. It'll just be going from the metal pipe to a concrete pipe for more longevity. And then again, it'll be a similar roadway profile. However, the engineer's going to be looking at increasing the slope and getting better sight distances from 53rd Street as you approach Woodlawn. I know I've received several calls on people, especially in the winter, people sliding back down that slope and not being able to get up it. So that's something that they will be looking at as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Any other discussion concerning this resolution?
I've got a whole list of questions. First, I want to know, we just spent the last year selling land and trying to reduce our budget so that we wouldn't have the stress on it with the increased payments, because the land payments were going to go up. Now we're taking on more debt. We're going to have more debt payments. Where did the money come from to do that? Our budget did not have any extra money in it that we just talked about at the last workshop.
So the two main cost savings are, one, the refinance. So with the total land debt, that you remember that was going up.
I remember
and then
that, but
it
it's
would
not
go
really
back
a
down.
cost saving. It's a money we don't have to spend that we would have had to come up with extra.
Right. So
Had we not refinanced, we would be looking at a budget increase just to pay for the land debt.
probably, yep.
So we can't call that a cost saving.
Well, but our interest rate was cut from like 4%
Yes,
to
but we're
about
still-
2%.
We're
So
still
that's
making a payment that's approximately the same as it was this year.
Right. So the interest savings and then that balloon going away, that helped with the savings. With the land sales, so we were able to put some cash down when we did the refinance. Remember, we put about 1.2 million down, so that's lowered our debt service payments. And then the land that we sold, a lot of it had special assessments attached to it, to the tune of about $200,000 a year. So between those, when we were looking at the 2022 budget prior to this year, so when we were looking 5 years down, our payments were going to go up. We were looking at possibly a tax increase with that additional debt on the land. That went away. Specials went away. So, and the growth. So we're building about 100 new houses a year. That's all new tax revenue that comes in. So you take the cost savings and then the growth, then that's the amount that we think we can cover the $210,000 payment with.
Okay, I don't agree with any of that, to be honest with you. Another thing we've got coming up is we're going to have to issue a bond for Woodlawn. So that's going to increase our budget costs next year, probably.
Yeah.
So we're
and
looking at more money again
so,
on top of this.
so
I
would-
foresee us, after all the work we did this last year, coming up in 2 years with the exact same payments amounts that we just tried to get away from, is what I see happening.
well, according to our Ted's 5-year and the debt over the period of time, it's all going to be going down. And he included Woodlawn. So I think what we'll need to
Well,
do, if you're concerned about that, we'll have Ted come back. He'll be at the workshop anyway in August. So he can go back over. He's got all the debt payments and things. And then when Woodlawn's going to hit. And then he can go over that and maybe make you feel a little bit more comfortable on that.
Okay, because I really think we're jumping the gun here trying to ask for a bond. I don't think we have really talked through all the implications of these streets and the costs. And here we are asking for money to do them. That's my opinion, that we're ahead of the plan here. On 53rd Street, is it going to be a wider road? Will it have a shoulder?
No, 53rd will be a 2-lane with as Ann was saying, a residential type. So it'll be a open ditch, but the ditches will be fixed.
So we're basically going to get the same road, except better condition.
Yes, but like Ann was saying, if you want to go to a Woodlawn or 45th, that's a 3-lane turn signals, you're at $8 million. So you're looking at $2 million just to get a better road, better ditches, or $8 million for everything.
I would just like to see it wide enough to have something on the right side of the white line.
And there
So
may
that
be.
if you make an
'cause
error,
we talked about that.
because that's
Yeah.
a really deep ditch.
Yep.
And I have that same problem with 53rd there over by the high school. We built the road higher even, and it's a deep ditch, and there is no margin for error. And if you drive down 45th over by Cypress, where we put in the same cement road, that road's narrower, and you can see people have gone off of that, and constantly the tire tracks are at least a foot to the side of the road on both sides. That road should have some kind of shoulder to it
Yeah.
for forgiveness.
Yep. And you're right. And it's the issue is, like we've talked about, is we're growing pains because the roads need to be done. But we don't have the money to do it, what you're suggesting. So we had to put in what we could, spend $1 million and do it. And we didn't get, the Woodlawn that we're going to get, but we didn't have the $8 million to do it either. So
Yeah, it would have only
that's the
cost us
struggle.
another 700,000, I think was all Woodlawn was going to cost that we didn't do. Also, there's some kind of crossing there at 53rd and Woodlawn. I think there's a pipeline crosses that corner because we looked at the triangle shape of the housing division that comes up to that corner.
Yeah, but I think we'll have to look, but I think it goes across. I know it goes across Woodlawn, but I'm not sure it actually hits 53rd or not. We'll have to look and see.
Okay, so that's a concern. I lost my train of thought. I had one. Those are the questions I had written down. I had another one that I can't remember at the moment. But anyway, I still think we need to do more serious research into this before we start issuing bonds. And I know there were some other things that Ann had that she wanted to do. And I don't know, some of this we could do directly out of the budget that we were looking at. So I'm not sure why we didn't bond them. So that's back to what else are we talking about doing with the money that we budgeted? So, do we really need that much bond? Or do we need more bond, as somebody suggested that we might possibly run into needing more? But we had approximately $800,000 we were talking about for roads for next year. We haven't cemented that, but that's what we were looking at.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
Two things. First, I just wanted to say that I think as we were going through the budget with Ted at our last workshop, I think it was on page 34 that he highlighted where our savings would come out in the land sales that would be used to pay for any new debt. And as I'm looking at it now from our new budget packet website that's so handy, it's showing me that it's about $315,000 in difference from the 2021 budget to the 2022 budget. And so that specifically is on the land expenses page, and it shows that as the amount that went down from the 2021 budget to the 2022 budget. And so I did want to call that out. And then I was interested, Councilmember Welch, if you would maybe just say a few more words about the additional research that you're thinking that we should do. Did you have something specific in mind that might make you more comfortable with this? What are the types of things that you have in
I want to see a
mind?
longer term plan. The Russians do 5 and 10 year plans. I think we ought to be looking at that for our roads, something like that, so that we know what projects we're coming up with over that time period, what we're going to spend money on. I know a year ago, Ann was talking about fixing Oliver Drive. And I haven't seen that even come up again. And I know it has big potholes in it. It hasn't been repaired, but I don't see us spending money on it. So I know there's other projects like that around town. They're not huge, but they all add up. If you put them all together, it could turn into some money. And we've got a couple of streets, that are falling apart. We've got one that Ann put out for bid and didn't get the kind of bid she wanted on to totally repair the street for, a few hundred feet. And we've got Kruger that's looking bad. And you drive around town, there's several streets that look like we've just abandoned them. We're going to wait till they get so bad we have to fix them because we can't do something that will keep them for another 10 years. So I'd like to see the full list of streets. We talked about this before. I think Ann was looking at some kind of software to come up with a full list of streets, a rough idea what it's going to cost to fix them. And start looking at it that way instead of, oh my gosh, we got to do 53rd. We got to issue a bond. We're just
Mr. Mayor,
reactionary here.
Mr. Short.
I wasn't at the workshop, so I hope I'm not sounding foolish on this, but I assume some of the motivation here is the bond at the percent they're at there's like a reason we don't want to think about this for a year at the current bond rates. Is that some of the thinking here?
I think there's concern with that, but I personally am not concerned that the interest rates are going to go up that much over a year.
Yeah, it was
Our
just,
bond person may have a better idea, but
and it was, and thank you, Joel. Basically, this came about from our discussion at the last workshop. The consensus I heard was, let's take the top 3 projects, let's do a bond, because we're looking at a 1.5% interest, and not knowing exactly what the dollar amount we were comfortable with. That's why I asked Kevin to kind of explain, can we move that in the next month or so, because we're going to have another workshop. We're going to go back over the budget some more. Ted's going to show you how a $210,000 payment will affect our budget next year. And of course, he'll look at when Woodlawn's coming on, and so you can see that long term. And so just really to get, number one, if we need to do these projects and we want to try to get them done this year, we need to get moving on it. And, again, the interest rate's low, may or may not go up, who knows? But certainly you could table it. If you'd like some more time, want to go through the next workshop, we can do that. It's completely up to the council, what you feel comfortable with.
yeah, my comment at the workshop was that I would consider these, which meant I want more information. We should talk about it, not let's do it and see what it's going to cost. Okay, to clarify what somebody may have misunderstood.
Mr. Mayor, I would be okay with tabling it, but I don't want to table it forever. I think we should probably decide one way or another here, and not an incredibly amount of time with the interest rates the way they are. Also, obviously when I got on the council, I was highly motivated to sell land, and we've done just incredibly good at that. And it was like, well, what did we want to do with our savings? Well, roads is what I wanted to do with the savings, and 53rd is getting just, I guess if we had no money and we couldn't even afford to take out the bond, I guess we'd all just bounce our way down the road. But as new development goes out there, I think it should have been done 10 years ago, whatever the number was. But this type of thing seems to make sense with the rates going so low and what it would doing savings. And also, as far as taking out a bond, my understanding is when you want to do a project that's millions of dollars, you take out a bond. It's not like we're not going to save up cash and buy it for large projects. So I am very supportive of the direction we're going and thinking about it. I'm willing to table it, but I would not want to table it too long and shove it down the road too well. But if Councilman Welch, I wasn't at the last workshop, so I'd be fine. I'm always up for more information, but I just wouldn't want to kick it down too far down the road.
One other thing, when I started, I wanted to sell land and get that debt out of here is what I wanted to do. And with the savings, yes, I wanted to do more roads. That's something we should increase. But I also think that we should be looking at the mill levy. And if we can come up with $300,000, that's 4 mills. Why are we not reducing the mill levy at the same time? It's my constant problem I've had. We are charging today's citizens for the future citizens. And that's why, we talked about dropping the mill a half mill, but that's very much just can't think of the right word. We're just doing it for looks mostly.
And Mr.
Because
Mayor,
half a mill is not really going to affect most people that much.
I agree. I'd love to lower taxes too. Unfortunately, as a city, we are playing massive catch up for complete, mismanagement over a very, very long time. And it would be my long-term goal to lower taxes as well. But I believe if we're going to have a city where people are going to want to build, nice upper class homes and the streets are not good, that's just unacceptable. Even when I know people that have bought houses in Bel Aire, and one of their concerns was, the place is starting to look old and it looks beat up. And what's the main factor in that? It's the roads. So if it's too much money or whatever, I'm open to something. But if we're going to spend money, it seems like we got to keep these roads up because we just did such a bad job on it. And I think in order to keep better, beautiful and attractive and keeping more development and growth, I think we've got to consider it. I'm not saying yes, and I'm fine with tabling if that's what Councilman Welch feels like. But I once again would reiterate, not pushing it down too far and just let it get by us.
I agree with you on roads that we need to do something for them. But I also think this has come up so fast that our citizens really probably haven't had time to hear about it and complain about it. So I don't know if they're okay with us taking out another big bond so that we can fix roads. Maybe they're fine with that. in which case I'll be all on board. If they're all happy paying for it, I'll be happy to do it.
So
Mr.
may
Mayor.
may I suggest that we look at, and just suggestion because I'm the mayor, I can't make the motion, but that we look at tabling this and discussing it at the next workshop.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith?
My only concern with that is if we're going to table it, I'd like to understand what actions we're going to take between now and then and what our request is of staff between now and then to get us the clarity that we need to make a decision. I don't feel like that's been clearly articulated yet. I do fear that we could get into a state of analysis paralysis here because we have so many roads that need attention, especially in our neighborhoods and in the older parts of Bel Aire. To Councilmember Welch's point, there are so many streets that need replaced. The things that we're talking about here are all arterial streets that everyone in Bel Aire is going to use. And so I guess I'm more comfortable with it because these are arterials, and especially with 53rd, something needs to be done there sooner rather than later because there is a safety issue. And then with 45th Street, I think it's really smart to get that engineering done because there continues to be federal money available for street projects. And if we have the engineering done, we'll be positioned to get that paid for. If we continue to delay that, we will not be positioned to get that paid for. And I think we're setting ourselves up to miss an opportunity there. So I agree with the sentiment. And I also agree with Councilmember Welch's sentiment on continuing to look at the mill levy. And that's why I think we need to kind of take an approach somewhere in the middle and work to lower the mill levy a little bit. We shouldn't spend all of the increases that we get out of the assessed value. And Ted committed to taking a look at, I believe it was a 1 mil reduction in the budget to come back to us with that proposal, which I think is a nice balance of spending some of these savings on roads and also starting to make progress on a lower mill levy over time.
I think Ted was aiming at 44 and a half, which was actually more than 1 mil from where his budget was, but it's less than a mil from where we say we're trying to be. If you remember that. And I don't want to table this until after our next workshop because that's already, the middle of next month. I don't know if there's a way that we can get together sometime between now and then to iron all this out. A special workshop just on streets. I have some sense of urgency in this too, but I don't want to run it by so fast that we screw up.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
what specifically would be your kind of proposed agenda topics for that meeting? Like, what are you looking to cover?
I would like to have the full list of streets that we need to repair. I guess some good idea on what we're actually going to build, because I don't want to build, like I said, a narrow road that people are going to fall off of. I want if we're going to spend $1.5 million building a road, I want it to be a little bit better than what we got. Okay. I think Ann has a comment here. I'll let her speak.
Councilmember Welch, I hear you. We did include in the plan for this year to have an outside company come in and help us evaluate all the streets and put in that plan. Those are mainly residential streets. The arterial streets, we already know what needs to be done. We are starting to work towards that. As Councilmember Schroeder said, those arterial streets are generally the ones that you take out the bonds for. Residential streets such as Baton, such as Kruger that you had mentioned, other ones, particularly Old Bel Aire, Pearson Addition, one street is, if we're going to completely remove and replace curb and gutter, everything, you're talking between 300 and 400,000. So that's an order of magnitude difference between what you're talking about on 53rd Street at $2 million. So I can certainly have a list of arterial streets, but I cannot have a list of residential streets until we get that firm online to go through and get the streets. I have gone through and evaluated streets over the past several years, and I do have a very rough listing. I remember giving it to Mayor Austin and I believe Mayor Benaj on the bottom line of approximately how much it's going to take. I don't even want to quote, but it was very large to fix
It's also 2 years
all the
old,
streets.
so the prices have inflated, I'm sure.
Oh, definitely. So I'm happy to provide the information that I have. I was prepared to provide Mr. Lasher with a little bit more detailed information on the 3 projects. But the firms that I'm working with on those, I did not ask to have that back until the next budget workshop, which would be middle of August. I can certainly press on some of them if we need it sooner.
Well, we may just have to wait, but I would prefer to do it sooner. Do we know how much money we're going to have left over from the 2021 budget?
No.
And for what we're budgeting for 2022, are those all going to be residential streets, or are we going to use some of that for our arterials?
We
Those are
will,
questions I'd like to discuss.
definitely.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith?
question for our bond counsel. If we were to, I believe tonight, what's on our agenda would start the process of issuing bonds. If we were to start this process and then which I believe is going to be a long process, it's a multi-month process, and then we were to decide, you know what, after further review, we've decided this isn't a good idea. We don't actually want to issue the bonds. How long would we have to decide that? And what would it take to just stop the process? And would it cost us anything?
I'll answer the last one first. I don't think it will cost you anything. If you got all the way to the point of having the sale that you all have been through, taking bids, there are a number of reasons you may not want to sell the bonds that night. It may be the interest rates, something happened in the market that day. The interest rates are not even close to what you had in mind. Or it could be that in the week or two leading up to the date of the sale, things change, minds change about proceeding with the project, and you just don't accept the winning bid. Now, the latter that I just described, if you know before the sale, Adam Pope, your financial advisor, would probably try to get some information out to the market to say, don't bid. You have this information, but this is being tabled or they're going in a different direction. So to answer your question, really up to the point of accepting a winning bid for the bonds.
When do you estimate that would be from a calendar perspective?
I don't have the calendar in front of me. Adam,
In your packet, there was a calendar.
Yeah,
and
I'm struggling
basically,
to locate it.
Remember, it was in
Yeah,
there too,
it's,
but-
so October 5th is competitive pricing of the bonds
There
and
it is.
approval by council.
Yeah. October
So
5th.
we'd have till October 5th.
Yes.
Okay, I got a question on that timeline too. Given the timeline and needing to get the engineering done on 45th Street, if we want to get WAMPO leftover funding this year, will we be able to get the engineering done? So there's no way we can get WAMPO funding this year. Okay,
And not likely that WAMPO would have that much excess reserves. But the point of getting the engineering done is to key it up for WAMPO to consider it as a project. Without the engineering being done, it's not that they won't key it up, but they're less likely to key it up, especially if other communities are ready. Okay.
okay. I had the impression that we thought we might be able to get some money this year if we were ready.
Probably not through the normal funding. Now, maybe some of the other money that's being thrown out there from the feds, there's some possibility, but I don't have that crystal ball.
Okay, I misunderstood then.
The other issue with getting the engineering done is what we've learned on Woodlawn. You remember, we actually got awarded the project 2 years ago, but it's taken a year to get an engineer on board, get it all engineered, and we're about 2 years past where the goal is if we have the engineering done, we get the WAMPO funds, then we could bid the project.
Right. And did you say we already had some kind of engineering report on 45th? Maybe it just needs updated. Maybe I heard that wrong. I'm making enough mistakes tonight.
You're fine. We did submit an original application for funding for 45th Street. There was no actually engineering done. It was just a very high-level overview of what it was going to cost so we can submit the application to WAMPO to get 45th Street into the TIP.
So we need a full study that shows any movement of utilities and
That-
the
that
right of
is-
ways and all that.
That
good
is
stuff
correct.
That somebody has to pay attention to.
Yep. You
Okay.
start from the ground survey to see what's there, and then you start building things up to get to the final design.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
It seems to me like I think we ought to move this forward, and then if we learn some more information that tells us we should stop it, then we should stop it at that point. So I'm going to make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing certain improvements to streets in the city of Bel Aire, Kansas, and authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds of the city of Bel Aire to pay such costs, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Dr. Schroeder. Any additional discussion?
I'd like to say something. I agree that if we can back off of this, I don't have a problem with doing this. I was intent actually to try to stop this tonight, but seeing that we can make changes in the future and not be totally committed, I'm okay with this.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Welch's comment also I totally agree with, in the sense that I have any reservations I would have had. The fact that we can pull away if for some reason we need to does give me peace of mind. When, as far as giving people comment, if there's suddenly an influx of comments in the next, whatever amount of time that citizens have a big concern about this provides ample amount of time for us to be able to change our mind. And I think that's a really valuable piece of the puzzle.
Very good. Thank you. Any additional comments before we go for a vote? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. And I do want to commend Public Works. They did a pretty decent job on doing some patches on 53rd. It isn't a great road, but it is not nearly as dangerous as it was previously to that effort. So thank you. Moving on to item B. While item B and C are separate issues, but they are related as they involve the same developer. So unfortunately, Next Level Hoops was unable to meet its financial obligations to the bank, and as a result, the bank foreclosed on the facility and offered the building for sale. Webb Industrial LLC negotiated a purchase of the building and planned to continue operating it as a sports facility. So Webb Industrial is asking for a 10-year, 100% tax abatement to allow the debt of the building to be paid off and the facility to break even. Mr. Steve Barrett, managing partner of Webb Industrial LLC, is here to share his plans for the facility and answering questions. From the city's perspective, such a venue brings in many advantages, including roughly 40,000 visitors to Bel Aire annually. Kansas statute requires a cost-benefit analysis to be completed prior to issuing an IRB and tax abatements. Our city manager can explain the analysis as well as the numbers of interest to the governing body. So, Mr. Barrett, would you like to speak to the council?
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate this. I think your rendition of what we're trying to do is very accurate. Mainly like to answer any questions anybody might have on what we're trying to do. Is that better? I'll try to lean down. Okay.
I showed the same problem.
Yeah.
Mr. Barrett,
Yes, sir.
this facility has had trouble making money in the past. Do you have any sort of broad strokes that you could explain why you think you'll at least be able to break even or make this profitable and won't have to be turned into another type of facility?
We're gonna work with the current group currently to try to make this, and basically it was the debt. They had a lot of debt on the building. COVID didn't help. We've got a great relationship with Legacy Bank. We'll buy our own bonds. And then we have some additional people that we'd like to bring into this organization and try to expand the services. So that's kind of our goal at this point. But until we get to this milestone and cover this hurdle, we can't really take the next step with, putting our whole package together. This IRB is actually pretty important to making this work.
And what kind of services were you thinking? I know you can't promise. We're not going to hold you to anything. Do you have any ideas, or can you express that tonight?
It'd be addition to what they have now. I'm meeting with and working with another group that would like to bring some additional volleyball, and that would be tournaments as well. There's, I have a 13-year-old daughter who I've coached basketball and helped with volleyball since she was no bigger than this table, and I'll tell you, I'm kind of passionate about it. So I enjoy sports. So part of me, when I heard this thing was probably in trouble, I have two other partners in this, and I went to them and said, hey, we ought to try to make this work. So our first intent is to keep it as a sports facility, grow the sporting events,
And if it doesn't work, then our backup is to turn it into warehouse and industrial. We have, it's close to 15 million square feet of this type of industrial product. We're in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, some in Colorado. We've even gone as far as West Virginia. But I have to tell you, that's a long way to manage property. So that's kind of our goal.
Any other questions for Mr. Bell? Questions for Mr. Lasher?
So I can, if you like, I can go over the cost benefit analysis. It's like the typical paperwork you get. It's got a bunch of numbers and it's 20 pages and that kind of stuff. So the state of Kansas requires that anytime a IRB is issued, and specifically if there's tax abatements involved, the cost benefit analysis be done. And there's different institutions that do that. We use Wichita State, obviously, because they're here. And so what the company has to do is tell us, what the investment they're going to make, how many full-time employees, what kind of visitors are they going to get. There's a whole lot of pieces that they have to answer, and they provide that information to the business provides that to us, and then we have them run the analysis. And so you can see all that information that they provided. And as Mr. Barrett said, one of the big benefits for this type of facility is those visitors, because the overwhelming majority are coming from outside of Sedgwick County, and a lot of them even come from outside of the state. So those are things that the state of Kansas likes to see, and so do we, because those are people staying in hotels and eating at restaurants and stuff. The important thing that we look at from a government agency, and of course when tax abatements are done in Kansas, all of the tax are abated. So the city gives up their property taxes, Sedgwick County gives up their school district, and the state, they don't have any property taxes. So that's why their benefit looks really good. But in this instance, so what we look at is page 3, where it looks at the fiscal impact of each each government. And we look at the ratio. That's why it's called a cost benefit ratio. And what that tells us is if it's a 1, that means that for every tax dollar we give up, we gain back. So that's a break even, basically. And if it's above a 1, then that's telling us that we give up $1 in taxes, but we're going to get $1.30 back in returns. So obviously, from the city, we're interested in that, but the state wants to see how everybody else is affected. So you'll see in this particular situation, the IRB will be for $5 million and a 10-year 100% tax abatement. The city has a 1.3 ratio. So again, that's above that 1. The county's 1.36. The state's at 5. Again, they're not giving up property taxes, but they're gaining the sales tax, the state sales tax. And then the school district doesn't have a lot of property tax. They have some, but they're at a 2. So every entity in this situation is getting a positive ratio or more than $1 in return.
Mr. Mayor, just a comment. So when I was first thinking about this, I was a little bit conflicted as to what to do. Typically, in my opinion, IRBs are offered when new construction's being built, when something new is being built. And so I saw this and I thought, my goodness, I actually think that IRBs have been issued on this twice in the past. This has been before the council 2 times in the past. Why is it here again? Why? What would the city's incentive be to move forward with this? But as I've thought about it more, I am going to support this, and it's really for 3 reasons. One is that I see this business as something that has a significant potential to drive other growth in the area, and so I think that's a real asset. And so I think we need it to be successful to have that opportunity to get more of that commercial growth that we desire here in Bel Aire. Secondly, that cost benefit study is really positive, and that gives me some confidence. And third is the broader relationship with Web Industrial LLC and the other items that are on our agenda. I think it's worth establishing this relationship and partnering with them on the broader development front here in Bel Aire. So those are the things that I'm thinking about.
Very good. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith,
I'll make a motion to approve a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds and provide other incentives for a sports facility, Web Industrial LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I have a motion by Mr. Smith and a second by Mr. Welch. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
I've been thinking about this, and I do know Mr. Barrett outside of here. I think when we first met, he probably only knows me as some kind of minister, and we played basketball together. And I had no idea what he did until his name came up in discussions like this. So I don't particularly think it's any kind of point of conflict, but I just figured that the best thing for me to do in this vote would be to abstain.
Thank you. Appreciate the transparency there. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. The vote is 3-0 with one abstention. Get the right word there. Motion passes. Moving on to item C. So Web Industrial LLC is purchasing 3 lots in Sunflower Commerce Park. They plan to construct 2 25,000 square feet commercial buildings for various tenants. As those become occupied, they will construct more buildings. Mr. Steve Barrett is representing Web Industrial and is here to explain their plans for additional buildings. Kansas statutes require a cost benefit analysis, just like we looked at for the other IRB, and that is also in your packet. Mr. Barrett.
So I like the pictures. That's great. So we consider this kind of an incubator space. These are going to be multiple 25,000 square foot buildings. Our general product is 100 to 250,000 feet. And what we're hoping is that we have this product, and then we can grow that into larger buildings. And we actually have, with the purchase of the hoop site, another 7-acre site that we can put a 100,000 foot building on. And then we're purchasing, can you show the other lots that we're purchasing? Oh, okay. So right as you come into the park, there's the first lot on the south. We're purchasing that one as well. And we're going to wait until we know what we're doing with this product. But once we have some momentum, we're going to put another 100 to 125,000 foot building up. So that's our goal for right now. And we like the fact you guys have a little bit more land should we need it in the near future.
We have a few acres.
Yeah, I like that.
Any questions or discussion of item C?
So, Mayor, if you'd like me to kind of go over for the citizens at home,
Very quick, very
again,
good,
the cost
yes.
benefit analysis. This project for both 2 buildings is a $5 million project. And so again, we look at the same the investment, obviously, the amount of employees, and the fact that these are spec buildings. So the developer doesn't have people to lease those yet. And so the way that the city has addressed this is through a spec building policy that encourages, like Mr. Barrett, to come in and build a building and then go out and get tenants. And so that building, or that spec building policy, was adopted in 2019. Mr. Welch brought it to my attention that it expired in 2019 because it was just for a year, although we've kept promoting it. And it doesn't affect this deal or the LOI because the letter of intent stands on its own merit based on the cost benefit analysis. So I'm going to be bringing that to you for your consideration so we can continue marketing that program. And because we've used it twice now, Mr. Barrett, and then we also used it in the Bel Aire Industrial Park for WHAM investments. They utilized it as well. So it's been a success. But anyway, we look at the the cost benefit ratio on this particular project, and Bel Aire is at 1.46, so it's even better than the other project. 1.69 for the Sedgwick County. The state's 16.9. Again, they don't have property taxes, but they see the benefit of the income tax and any potential sales taxes. And then the school districts was 1.3. So again, this project follows the spec building policy, and it's over a 1 benefit for every entity involved.
I should have asked on the last one, but what year is year one? Does that start immediately or is it?
No,
all
that would
next
start the year that it goes on the taxes. So it'll be next year.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Welch.
I'll make a motion to accept a letter of intent to issue industrial revenue bonds and provide other incentives for a speculative building, Web Industrial LLC, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Welch and second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Did you vote, Dr.
I'll
Schroeder?
abstain on this one as
You'll
well.
abstain on this one as well. So the motion carries 3-0 with 1 abstention. Moving on to item D. Thank you, Mr. Barrett. We appreciate your help. So item D is consider a bid for phase 1 storm drainage improvements for Skyview at block 49. 4 bids were received. The developer is ready to move forward with construction of phase 1 storm drainage. The cost of these improvements will be financed through a bond spread as special assessments against the benefiting lots. So the city engineer, Ann Stevens, is here to explain the project and answer questions.
So we have already accepted bids for the sanitary sewer improvements and the water improvements. This is the final piece of the utility improvements. As the mayor said, we received 4 bids for this, and McCullough was the lowest. They were actually the only one within the engineer's estimate, although Apex was very close. We have worked with McCullough on several occasions. They always do good work, and I would recommend that you approve their bid.
Mr. Mayor,
Dr. Schroeder.
I'll motion to accept a bid from McCullough in the amount not to exceed $481,895 for phase 1 storm water drain improvement Skyview at block 49 and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
A motion by Dr. Schroeder and a second by Ms. Nguyen. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. Item E. Recent heavy rains highlighted the need for more erosion control at the Bristol Hollow site. So additional expenses from the change order will be included in contract costs for the paving and drainage project and financed through bond being spread as special assessments against the benefiting lots. City engineer Ann Stevens is here to explain this project as well in the change order and answer any questions. So please tell us what this changeover is about, because I know we've had some problems with that development, and what are we doing now?
It's almost done. It's almost done. This change order really has 2 pieces to it. Number 1 is additional erosion control devices, and those were really brought to light with the heavy rains that we had. Normally, we don't have 3 inches in 3 hours, and that does a lot of damage to a site that doesn't have any grass growing on it. So this is actually not the correct development. Oh, no, wait, no, that's not the correct development. That is
I think so.
the one on the corner. So basically what we're doing is we're pulling out some of the silt fence that goes around inlets and putting wattles, which are much lower. It will allow water to go open over where the silt fence sticks up out of the ground about 2 to 3 feet high, and water just goes around it. So that will help. There is a very large empty area that the developer will not be building on, phases 2 and 3 of the project. A lot of that water will just go straight down the street that has been graded. It's not paved, it's just dirt, over the gravel cul-de-sac that we have in there onto the street. So we're putting in some wattles across the street to help slow that water down, try and keep the dirt where it belongs instead of in the street where it ended up. So the contractor is cleaning up the street. That is not included in the change order. They are doing a few other things for some ditch work that's not included in the change order. So it's mainly the additional erosion control devices. When you're designing a project, you do the best you can to guesstimate the erosion control devices that will be needed for a project, but you never really account for those very large rains. You kind of hope and pray they don't happen, but it did. The other part of this change order is permanent seeding. For whatever reason, only temporary seeding was involved in the original bid. That is out on site right now. It's a ryegrass. Ryegrass is going to die at the end of the year, and then we're going to have bare dirt. So there is permanent seeding involved for the pond that just has ryegrass, as well as phases 2 and 3. The first phase that the builder will be working on, we did not include permanent seeding for that. In discussions with the builder, they're anxious to get that going as soon as possible. So if they don't get that going this year, then they're going to have to do something for seeding at their own cost. It will be not a part of the project. So that's what this change order is. If anybody has questions, happy to stand for them. We're almost done. We're very close.
So you said there's water going across the street. It's not going across 53rd. It goes
No.
underneath 53rd, right?
There is a low point in Bristol Hollows that is 1,000 feet from 53rd.
Okay.
And that's where it's standing.
where it's
And
at.
unfortunately, it went right over the curb. There was just the protection devices, the matting that's behind the curb actually stayed in place and did a very good job. The seed that was drilled in stayed in place and popped right up right after that grain. But unfortunately, the dirt that was on top of the seed left and ended up kind of in the area, or not in the inlets, but those were protected with wattles. But
Okay.
there's a good 4 to 6 inches of dirt down there that's just sitting there. Well, we're getting it cleaned up.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Ryan, for Ms. Stevens?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to express annoyance and then make a motion. So I'll make a motion to accept change order number 4 from Don Linger Construction, the amount not to exceed $31,572.50 for Bristol Hollows Phase 1, and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second.
A motion by Dr. Schroeder and a second by Mr. Smith. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 4-0. I have no need for an executive session. Does anyone else need an executive session? Move on to item 13, discussion and future issues. Are there things we need to discuss for future issues?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
Maybe a little early to talk about our August workshop agenda, but I do think our city attorney's report talked a little bit about code enforcement and some of the code that we have around parking of recreational vehicles. I think that would be a fantastic section of the code for us to just review as a governing body in our next workshop, if that would be possible.
So a review of the code regarding recreational vehicle parking.
Should we include disabled vehicles at the same time? I don't think they're supposed to be parked in driveways, are they?
Right. It would be easy to sweep all of those in.
Okay, good. Very good. Thank you. Any other issues we need to think about? Hearing none, I guess we can move on to item 14, adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by Dr. Schroeder and second by Mr. Welch. Any discussion? Nobody ever wants to discuss that. Okay. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned. See everybody in 2 weeks.